Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. I do hope you're having a good day. Yes, today's podcast number 21, is with a good friend of mine, Huw Davies, who is the founder and creative director of the new company studio down in Melbourne in Australia. We talked about a number of different subjects, especially about the power of brands. What I would simply say is it was his first podcast, but he knocked it out of the park in my opinion. So please enjoy the podcast. Let me know what you think, and yes, have an outstanding day. Peace. Okay, we are recording. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Oh, happy Friday, or in some cases, happy Saturday to people on the other side of the world. I'm here today. This is podcast 21. I have actually remembered this time with my good friend, Huw. Who I have not seen in a good long time. Last time I saw him, the world was in the turmoil of a financial crisis. Everyone was at a panic, and he was fresh-faced over in the UK. And yes, over a few pints of beer and a good old Liverpool game, we started our friendship, and it was good. Some things about Huw. Yes, he is the founder and creative director of the new company studio. He is also a business owner slash consultant when it comes to branding. But that's enough about me saying what I need to say. But Huw, please introduce yourself to the lovely people out there.
Hi there, Miwa. Yeah, hi, I'm Huw. Thanks for having me on this. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. So thank you.
It's my honor.
It's by the accent you can probably tell I'm from Australia, and it's about 8:30 in the morning down here on the Saturday. So thank you for having me. My background, I suppose it's pretty interesting how my background has started, because I've been in graphic design and branding pretty much all my life.
Yeah.
Since the day, when I sort of went into university straight from school, and then had a big career. Basically went through the corporate system, worked for some advertising studios. Pretty much just found that it wasn't sort of for me, and then a few years ago started my own thing, to run my own thing. So a little bit of a snapshot. There's a few twists and turns, or a lot probably twists and turns along the way, and how I got to being a business owner now. Because it's a bit of a tricky road, the creative industry.
Okay. Now, so you started in basically graphic design. What drew you to that in the first place?
Yeah, I remember being, it was probably words and images. I know that sounds super, super simple, but back when I was at school, I went to an academic school. I went to a private school, and we did have some subjects that were sort of artistic, photography, media, those type of traditional ones. But I guess it was trying to find an outlet. So I did go to an academic school. I did okay academically. I actually originally wanted to become an architect, of all things, because it was sort of funneling me into this sort of, creative slash, bit more scientific, bit more maths orientated. But unfortunately, I found out pretty quickly that, my maths and sort of science scores were really not good enough to be an architect. So thankfully, I never got into that, and there were never any buildings that were built based on my maths and reasoning.
Oh no, it's falling.
Exactly. So I'm pleased I didn't affect any of those kinds of building things there. So look, I suppose getting into graphic design because of needed an outlet, basically, and a creative outlet. I actually studied, so to fast forward a little bit from school, when I finished, there weren't a lot of, as I said, going for an academic school, there wasn't a lot I could do to get straight into university, because I didn't have the folio. So for a
Okay.
lot of graphic design courses, you need to have shown work, that you need to that you've done. But I didn't have that, so I had to do like a foundation course for about a year,
Yeah.
and then straight after that, I actually went into product design, actually at
Mm.
Monash University here. So a little bit different. So product design was more like furniture. You could get into automotive.
Mm.
It was about 3D modeling, that kind of stuff. There were graphic
Yeah.
design components. So I got into that, but actually found probably about halfway through that degree that it wasn't quite for me.
Ah.
I remember coming home. I remember it really well, actually. I used to, go to a few, just to give my age away, but through the '90s, the dance scene was pretty awesome, and
Okay.
I used to go to a lot of parties and stuff like that, and I used to love all the DJ and the posters for all these parties, right?
Yeah.
And back in those days, they were very colourful. They were pretty wild. Some of them, they had some interesting typefaces and stuff like this, and I actually kind of fell in love with all that. And I remember coming home to my room, looking at all the posters that I had stuck up in my room, and I thought, this is what I actually want to do. I want to design not just posters, obviously, but
Yeah.
I wanted to make something commercial out of it. And I decided, I wanted to stop doing product design. So I basically deferred for a while, went to work, and then just tried to figure out how to get into graphics. So that
Wow.
was a bit of an epiphany that I had,
Mm.
which has turned out to be, really, really sort of beneficial, I think.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I would simply say you're quite fortunate because not many a person can actually have a epiphany moment like that. They sort of get stuck in one sort of track, and they're like sort of making that
Yeah, sure.
change because they've got, "Oh, I've got so much time invested, I've got this invested. Why I don't want to do that jump?" Yeah, it takes a little bit of bravery to do that, and self awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had that when I was younger. I don't know. I'm not sure where I got that from,
Mm.
which parent perhaps, but or whether that's a learned thing. But yeah, I tended to have that. So I tend because I'm quite being a creative. I'm sort of a sensitive, person to lots of different things. So I think I was quite sensitive to the situation back
Mm.
then, and kind of like, we had our teachers, our lecturers asking us midway through that course, like, what do you want to what do you want to major in,
Mm.
basically? What do you want to do in your final year? And there were people there that had been sketching in their books, designing cars and designing furniture and stuff like that. And I hadn't done any of that.
Mm.
Nothing was coming naturally, I suppose, for me. So yeah, for me it was a natural thing. Okay, don't particularly want to do that. Defer just in case I might change my mind, because it's
Mm.
not an easy thing, obviously, so almost to tell your parents as well.
It's like,
As well.
it's like, you're doing what? It's like,
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly,
no.
exactly. So it was a bit of a shock, I think, to them,
Mm.
uh, because I sort of changed tack. They're sort of like, "Well, you've just gotten into university. That's really well done.
Mm. Yeah.
Finish something."
Yeah. It's like, look, just get to the end of the course. If you want to
That's
change,
it.
then change them, but get to the end of the course. Yeah, no, I think many a person has heard that sort of statement from a parent down the road over the course
Mm,
of time.
I bet. I
And
bet.
yeah, it comes from a place where they're just worried for you, but yeah, you're like, going, come on, it'll work out, maybe. I'm not 100%
Absolutely.
sure. But yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's a bit of a risk, isn't it? I mean, it's certainly a risk. But I think generally I've always had that, and to this day I've had that feeling that, if you are doing something that you're not enjoying,
Mm,
that really there are other options for you, if you can, obviously, if you can figure them out. But don't sort of sit with something that you're not enjoying and it's making you unhappy
mm,
for too long, because you can feel, I think that can do sort of damage to your to a lot of things, to your confidence, to just your well-being, I think. So yeah, I was pleased that I sort of acknowledged that early on, and
mm,
then I tried to get back into university. I think like after about a year or so, because I actually went and worked in a warehouse and stuff, and just
Oh,
like packed books.
hey.
So something completely different.
Yeah, no, no, no. That's nothing wrong with that. That's all cool. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like packing books. You know, like this is the thing. Sometimes doing physical labor, some people look down upon it, but I don't see it that way. Like sometimes it is good to like really bring up a sweat on your brow, and like what I mean, know
Mm.
you felt a good day, hard day's work. I think it's underrated in many people's opinion. Plus, when you're doing work like that, it gives like for me, I worked in it like when I was in Cambridge. I was working in an industrial laundrette, 13 hours a day, and like it was like yeah, great people, and it gave me a good opportunity to like get my head together, like what I mean, help me focus as
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah.
I would recommend.
100%. 100%. And it's funny you mentioned Cambridge. I do remember you when you moved there.
Mm,
And I think at the time I may have mentioned that uh, I grew up not far from there, so in a little town called West Wickham.
okay.
And we may have had this conversation when we met over a beer watching Liverpool, win a game probably again. But in a snapshot, yeah, I was born over in the UK in Sussex, and then the family moved to Australia in 1983, so I was about
Mm,
8 years old. So and just to get bridge to the packing books thing, and an
mm.
interesting kind of a segue is that I was working at Cambridge University Press when I was doing that. So that was the branch here,
Yeah.
yeah, because my father worked at the organisation, so there was a bit of a synergy there.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, but so you went from packing books back to
Yeah,
university, and with your return to university, what was the sort of first steps? What put you on your path to now? I don't think that was very clear, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, good question. No, a good question. I remember I tried to get back into RMIT graphic design. I
Hmm.
didn't have again a large enough folio, and at that time, that was the kind of end of the 90s, I think. Excuse me. And technology was like computers have been around, but
Mm.
graphic design was starting to really take off in terms of digitizing. So you had a lot of software programs come out and people designing on their computer. It was very, very early days. And so I actually sort of took a sideways jump and sort of thought universities, I wasn't getting in, so I was a little bit disappointed,
Mm.
but they weren't offering too many, I guess, the practical side. So I actually went into a TAFE and I did a graphic art course.
Okay. Like a TAFE, just for like people like outside
Ah,
Australia.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. What is a TAFE? It's like,
So
yeah.
it is, if I'm correct, it is an acronym, but I won't go into that. Basically, it's like a tertiary, a technical college, you might
Okay.
say, and it is one that's it's an equivalent to a university in a way
Mm-hmm.
here. Um, they're notorious for being more practical, I suppose. It's not that they're known to be you don't do a degree there like a 4-year degree. You might do an associate diploma
Okay.
of graphic design, which is what I did. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much the difference. I won't
Yes.
get into sort of the
Yeah. So
technical things, but I think
basically,
that's plainly the difference.
technical college, more vocational type situation.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. No worries. No
So
worries.
I got into one of the local ones here in Melbourne,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fabulous because it showed me all different aspects of design. So I actually did a lot of graphic design, a lot of typography
Mm.
subjects, a lot of layout subjects. I was still doing some paste up, what they used to call in graphic art. So paste up was the old way of basically creating your layout.
Okay.
Um, we used to cut out different things any of the listeners that know if they're in graphic design,
Yeah.
they might know what I'm talking about here. But I won't go into much detail. But basically, it was sort of like the old way.
Yeah, no, but like you're talking, you're mentioning all of this. Sorry to interrupt, but it's like it's quite
Mm,
fascinating because you go right. You had to do this, had to cut out that, and like this. Now, like if you said
yeah,
that to someone who's doing graphic design right now, they'll look at you most probably in the realms of shock and horror because like yeah,
they would.
it's
Yeah,
it's so far removed. It's like no, but yes,
they absolutely. No, you're right, Mima. I mean, it's amazing how far things have come.
mm,
And when I was at uni, or sorry, the TAFE, the college there, that was a time when they were going through a transition. So
mm,
it was going from the old, let's call it the paste up method. So it was a very manual method
yeah,
of, and people, they were using this for magazine layouts. You know, if anyone was in publishing,
mm-hmm,
newspapers, I think maybe were the same. I'm not too sure. Not a specialty, but it may be the same. But I guess it was the way of organizing your content um, into a layout where you would be sticking things together, and then you were taking what was called a bromide um, photograph of it using
okay.
a bromide machine. To anybody listening, you can look it up, go Google it.
Like you're saying stuff. I'm like a bromide. Okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. So I was, pleased that I went through that, and pleased when I started, because I'd actually didn't like doing that. I don't think anybody, if you put your hand up and said you enjoyed doing that, I think that might
uh,
be, a little bit loose in your head. But no, it was a bit of fun. It was a bit of fun, and it was always good to learn, I think, that foundation
mm,
kind of technique back then
yeah,
for design. So, but I was obviously pleased that there were computers involved, and then we started using, Adobe software back then,
mm,
and a bunch of other things.
uh,
So it was great.
excellent. So basically, while you were at the Tate, like the Tate, is it like your technical
The
college,
TAFE, the
TAFE,
TAFE,
TAFE?
yes.
You went like, was it a case of if someone was to like look at things now, would you recommend them going to university or go more down the practical path in sort of today's market?
Hmm, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Yeah, because I've been thinking about this actually,
Mm,
about because there's and just to not answer your question directly, but I think just generally, as a general comment, I think university have been struggling, haven't they, in terms of making them relevant, their courses.
yeah.
I certainly know that here anyway. I'm not sure how that is in the UK, but yeah, in Australia, I think it's because we have private colleges here too,
Yeah.
that do offer graphic design courses in an accelerated fashion. So you might only need about 3 months or 6 months to sort of do a course. Um, and I think that the designers that are coming up out of that have actually been pretty good from
Okay.
all accounts, from what I've been seeing. Um, yeah, when it first started, I think there was a lot of people that had gone to university or done a TAFE course, maybe like
Mm,
myself, or some kind of other learning, may have sort of frowned upon. I think when they first come out, this is years ago. This is hopefully my dates are right, but mate, it's probably at least 10 years ago when these colleges started to come out. But
yeah.
yeah, I think it was always a bit. I'm not so sure how that works. You
Mm,
wonder about the quality of the work that they're producing and stuff like that. Um, these days, I think there's parity. I mean, personally, I'm not sure that 4 years at a university is the best way to go or use of your time.
yeah.
But it's a tricky one. I think it's a tricky one because it's very personal. Excuse me. And I think there's other options now. I
Mm,
think there's courses that you can do online.
yeah.
Um, there's YouTube, of course, which is massive.
Yes.
And so there's all these different ways that you can get your knowledge. And I would say to people, this is probably how I would say it. I would say if the universities are doing courses that are relevant, and sort of accelerate it, and then do that, because you learn a lot of other life skills, obviously,
Yeah.
don't you? Going to university and um, dealing with working with other people and in different projects. But if that's not for you, that sort of extended time, you want to actually do things a bit quicker, then I would go to maybe one of the private colleges, or even online courses as well, just to accelerate it. Because 4 years is a long time, man.
Yeah, no, it is a long time. It is a long time. Yeah, the reason why I bring up the question, as you mentioned YouTube, but like there's like things like Skillshare out there now, and oh God, what's the other? Is it Udemy or something like that?
Udemy, yeah,
Yeah,
Udemy is
um,
great as well.
yeah, where when it comes to certain things, well, like when it's not a sort of vocational subject like law, architecture, or basically like one or medicine, it's a case of I kind of look at when I see photography, graphic design, web design, stuff like this, just by the nature of the market and how quickly it can sort of shift and change. By the time you're doing a 4 year course, it's like what you learn at the beginning of that course can change quite extremely in a year, but most definitely over 4 years. That's the only reason why I sort of bring it up, just to like get a clearer idea for someone who's been in the business, like knows what's going on with the sort of current landscape, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, you make a good point. Yeah, things move, because it's technology based, it's software based, graphic
Mm,
design, and it's style, there's fashion in it as well. Design moves pretty quickly, and so yeah, it needs to be relevant, doesn't it?
mm,
Um, YouTube, absolutely great resource. I was thinking too that there's also I think because graphic design and design in general, and look, this is probably for a lot of creatives as well,
mm.
is that some people are really natural towards it, right? So it's kind of, we gravitate, if you're a creative, we gravitate towards certain jobs. Now, some of them you might not need a lot of education, to be honest, around it. So
That's
there's still a lot
controversial.
of, yeah, I know. I know it's a bit of a controversial sort of a subject. I suppose I just feel that there's plenty of ways now, because of the internet. You
Mm,
can you can create work at home. You can make up your own projects. You can redesign, your favorite artists, CD cover or a poster, or redesign a website or something like that. You can actually do that stuff all from home,
mm.
and you can post it on various platforms to get feedback. So you can start finding your outlet without having to go through that process of traditional learning, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Now, yeah.
yeah. No, with you finishing university, what was your first job? Like what was the sort of first job you sort of got into? Can you remember what the sort of first assignment was for your job?
I can remember the first job because I always look back on it and think, I think that was my best job.
Ah,
Even now,
okay.
probably, well, in terms of the most fun, let's put it that way.
Uh-huh.
So my first job, I was working for a small record label in here in Melbourne. Here, they were
Nice.
actually in Box Hill. Funny enough, it's actually not far away from where I'm living right now, and it was a small record label, and they used to uh, they used to license music from overseas, from Europe. And so I remember every sort of Monday morning we would have a meeting,
Yeah.
and some of the A&R guys would walk in with like a stack of CDs, right? Back then, it was sort of 2000, I think 2001 maybe,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of era. And they would walk in with a stack of CDs, and like we would just play them. Everyone would stand around listening, and if we liked them, we would say, right, let's license that. If we didn't, we would sort of throw it in the bin. And then what they would say to me was, okay, this is what we're going to go with.
Yeah.
Take the music back to your desk. And I had to design the cover,
Wow.
so the CD cover, or maybe the record cover as well.
Mm.
So that was pretty amazing for me because I love music. Like that's been a passion,
Yeah.
literally, just all my life. All the way from hip hop through the 90s, through going to parties and raves and stuff through the 90s and early 2000s, and even now. So that pretty much married my first job, so graphic design,
Yeah.
to music. Yeah, remember it well.
Ah. Why did you leave? Yeah, it's like,
Well, I'm sure they're not listening, but that business actually sort of went into receivership. So
oh.
it went through a bit of a tough time over
Okay.
about, I think I was there for 2 years.
Ah.
Yeah,
No, because that sounds fantastic. Marrying up both of your loves, music and creativity on your part. Ah, yeah, that what more could you want? Like, you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. It was really interesting actually. And just to see how I think that industry worked too.
Mm.
Because sometimes the artists might actually have their own artwork already done.
Yeah.
So if we were licensing uh, um, you know, um, some music from Germany or something, that artist might already have it. So we might get sent it,
Mm.
and then I would have to create something from those photographs of the artist to create something. But sometimes I had like open slather. I had like just create something because we've got nothing basically.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
that was a really awesome in terms of like creative process. Because what I would do would just sort of like listen to the tune and figure out something, and then just try and put it on the computer. So yeah, thrown into the fire, put it
uh,
that way.
Excellent. Like, thrown into fire, but yeah, came through it stronger on the other side, no doubt.
Absolutely. No, it
Uh,
was a great experience. Great experience.
Perfect. Like, is it possible to tell me something about the Design Jam project? Um, is it you Design Jam project officer? Global ideas?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a few years ago.
Right.
Yeah, that was for a so that was a bit of volunteering that I did actually,
Okay.
and a little bit different to what I do now, which is graphic design. That was helping facilitate uh, some workshops. So this was global ideas.
Mm.
If you guys want to look them up, are actually a health. They're not for profit. That basically they run a forum sort of every year, and they tackle and they want to sort of bring to light a lot of health related problems and ideas and stuff
Mm.
to the population, right? So they're based locally here in office is Carlton, I think, from
Okay.
memory. So yeah, that was an interesting project for me because it related to health related issues, and it was a community based sort of project as well.
Mm.
And just from memory, because I'm sort of trying to take my mind back to that, I think it was around 4 years ago from
Yeah.
memory. Um, yeah, it was very interesting. We would tackle a problem. To just give you a snapshot of what those forums were like, or that was that we would tackle a global problem around a health issue,
Mm.
and it would be a discussion piece, and we would try and figure out between ourselves and people that would join us,
Yeah.
right? So people had to buy tickets to come, and we would go through the process of human-centered design, which again is something that I can touch on, but we might want to go into a little bit of detail later, is that go through the problem that we're posing, brainstorm some ideas on potentially how a group of people can help affect that,
Mm.
and then what solutions you have come up with, and then pretty much present a solution back to the group.
Ah.
So have you heard of human-centered design? Anyone?
No, I have not. Like, this is the first time I sort of come across it. I think I may have heard of the concept before in maybe a slightly packaged in a slightly different way. But yes, the brainstorming and getting people together to tackle a great solution. To tackle a great problem, to come up with a solution.
Mm,
No, I can't say I've been to many a workshop like that. The closest I think I've been to something like that is way back in the day when I was doing like summer camps over in the United States of America,
okay.
randomly. But yeah, where they had your orientation and doing trust falls and like you know what I mean, doing those games where you had to
Oh
work as a
yeah,
team.
yeah,
So yes, I've got to say, doing that stuff back in the day, it takes me back, way back. Each year it
yes.
just gets a little bit further away, but yeah, but it was like good times for me then, and it made you think about yeah the whole process of working together, not so much as a team, but more as a community, if you get what I
Mm,
mean.
I
So
do.
yeah, so I think I can't when I try to describe team and community, it's one of those things where in my mind I know it's two clear things, but explaining it, it's not the easiest thing to explain if you get what I mean.
Mm.
Mm,
No, I understand. Yeah, for sure. And the community aspect is what human-centered design is really all about.
mm,
Yeah, it's something that's been it's very topical. It has been very topical here in Australia for quite a long time, a
yeah,
number of years. There's courses that you can do in it. There's you may have heard of UX design, so user
yeah,
experience. Yeah, so there's kind of knowledge behind what human-centered design is, and it's pretty much like it's an approach to a problem solving. Okay,
mm,
to help to help you design solutions uh, using a human perspective. So that's kind of what it means.
mm,
So UX has sort of come out of that as well because user experience is all around. Well, how do people feel when they're on your website? How
mm,
do they feel when they come into your um, branch of bank branch, for example, just as an example. So yeah, going back to that sort of facilitator role that I had, that was super interesting because
yeah,
we would have a group of really mostly younger people, so
mm,
people that are interested in, they might be doing a science degree. Some of them had uh, medical backgrounds, so some of them were young doctors, and they had a fascination and an interest in how we can help people globally or locally, um, and how do we tackle a local problem, and it might be something around a health related issue,
mm.
and not just to touch on it. Obviously, there's some medical stuff happening around at the moment with the whole
I no, I have
coro-
no idea what you're talking about.
coronavirus thing. Have you heard of
uh,
that?
um, no, no, I can't say it's been mentioned at all. Like
You
yeah,
may have heard it in passing,
yeah,
perhaps.
no, no, like put it this way. This April, I was meant to be running the Paris Marathon. Like so,
Yep.
yeah. So basically, found out yesterday that's been postponed until
Oh no.
October. So like yeah, like let's just say things are shutting down fast in mainland Europe. Plus, they're going to have
Mm.
a meeting. I believe what I read on the BBC website on Monday. Basically, everyone, different sports organizations are getting together on Monday to basically talk about whether they're going to close doors on sporting events and gatherings. So maybe by
Yeah.
this time next week, there will not be a London Marathon. Like I was meant to go to well, at this moment in time, I'm still going to Everton, like Everton versus Liverpool at
Yep.
Goodison on the
Mm-hmm.
16th, but I haven't bought my like train tickets to go up there
Yep.
yet because
Because you're not sure yet. Yeah.
yeah, I think at this moment in time, the way it looks, it most probably be behind closed doors. So yeah,
Ah,
it,
that's so disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's a crazy time, and like you know what, these things seem to crawl up every 100 years. These sort of like yeah, I can't say, as if I say pandemic, it makes
Mm.
it sound a lot worse than it is. But like right now, like it's by all means, it's no Spanish flu, you know what I mean?
No, no, not at all.
Which was absolutely freaking insane. Like you know what I mean?
Mm.
Millions of people died in that. But it's one
Yeah.
of those things where you kind of now looking at it going, yeah, the numbers they're not crazy high, but it's high enough, and I think the way it's been reported that you can't avoid but pay attention to it. You know, it's like yeah,
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
there was this can't remember. There was a BBC program I believe on Tuesday, and they were basically talking about the whole coronavirus, and they were going into it, and you're like, okay, fine, yeah. It started out, gave you some numbers, and the numbers were not that high. It was very low. But then
Mm.
the production value kicked in. And all I got to simply say is, like, if you didn't see the numbers at the beginning, you would think we're all about to go off a cliff
Mm.
into like the great beyond. And you're like going, okay. Flu is still a bigger killer than the
Yeah.
coronavirus. Like I understand this is something new and it might have to be played a slightly different way because they might not know where it might end up, but it's still
Mm.
flu is still a bigger killer on the human race year on year than this virus right now. So it's like
Yeah.
so it's like
Yeah. It's about perspective, I think, isn't it? I think that's what.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Look. Everyone has their own opinion, I think, about it.
mm,
Everyone will deal with it differently because there's a lot of fear around. And my perspective in Australia is, yeah, our media is really pushing really, really hard to, I think, instill a lot of fear in people, which
yeah,
I, just my personal opinion, I really don't like that.
yeah,
I think I try and sort of search out my own, advice and sort of stats around things just to sort of get more of an overview rather than sort of panic mode.
yeah.
There's, I don't know if you've seen, but there's people buying up toilet roll in this country. I don't know whether I think has it reached your country yet?
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. And you know, it's like, oh, right, like on the BBC website, you just see like this whole row, like nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
It's like basically you see like, I look, I put it this way, where I'm in Crouch End, like I walked into the local co-op there, yeah, there's plenty of toilet roll there. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud because the whole world would go crazy.
That's right.
But
Everyone will be going there.
I've seen images where you just see the whole row just taken out. It's like, yeah, got food, everything like this, and it comes to the toilet row, nothing. But it's
Yeah.
like, you know, it's like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a strange one. It's a phenomenon, and I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, just local ones, community ones as well. And
uh-huh,
I think the difficult thing with it is that there's a lot of families and people that are struggling to even just buy those essentials because
mm,
there's people out there that are buying up on it all. So I think that's where we need to get some perspective and just start thinking about, okay, what your needs are. Government has come out and said that we're not running out. I think Kleenex and all these companies, Sorbent, have come out and said we're running like 24 hours our machines now to
yeah,
like run around the clock to get all this stuff to you. So we're not going to be running out. So it's okay. Everyone calm down for a second.
yeah. Look, this is a thing. Yeah, you go okay. If they're gonna close, like put sport events behind closed doors,
Mm,
it's a, it's a practical thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. Like yeah, but let's just say we're nowhere near some like yeah, zombie apocalypse or something like
mm.
this. So yeah, get a grip, people. Calm
Get a
down,
grip.
and like yeah, if you are sick, stay at home. Like
Just stay at home.
yeah, get
Yeah, just stay at home.
get fluids down you. Like do what you need to do, and then get better. Because
Mm,
more
mm.
people have got better than this than have died from this. So yeah,
No, that's right. That's right. No, and look, We had a program here. I'm not sure if you got any similar exposure in the UK, but we've got a program here that a bit of an alternative sort of news, more of a variety show that happens once a week. But it's popular because they tend to interview people and sort of they get real news. You know, it's not. It doesn't seem to be tainted by, I don't know, whatever your persuasion. But this one, they actually interviewed a couple of people that were on that cruise ship.
Oh yeah.
The one that got infected, and there were some people.
Is this the one in Japan? Or...
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, and they interviewed. So there were a young couple, and they were interviewed, and they were just asked like, "How did you feel?" Because both of them got infected with the coronavirus when they were on the ship. And both of them said that they actually didn't have bad symptoms at all. They didn't really feel like they had, I think one of them had a bit of a cough. The guy said, I didn't really feel like I had anything wrong with me. And so he said, if I didn't know that I was infected with the virus, I probably wouldn't have known. So they had them in quarantine, but he said that he felt quite fine. They were in quarantine for quite a while, and obviously they're off the ship and everything now. But I think what was telling for me was that, first of all, they weren't showing too many symptoms.
Yeah.
Second, they actually said that, I think the first week they were on the boat, the guy actually caught the flu, so the regular flu, and said that it was far, far worse. He felt. He said he was in bed for like 2 days or something. He had a headache and, you know, the usual kind of the fever. He said that he had quite a bad fever and stuff like that. So that was just a thing about perspective for me. That was a really interesting and really good thing that was put out, because it gave perspective on, I think if you're in that demographic of, you know, certain age group where you're fit and healthy, I think it sounds like you're going to be okay. And I think just like with the flu, that there's certain age groups, isn't it? The elderly and stuff that are just more affected, unfortunately. So you've got to be more careful.
Absolutely. And it just brings it back to the same, like my point earlier. The flu has been more deadly. Well, it's more deadly year on year, and than this coronavirus. And yes, it's going like the same at-risk people from the flu are at risk for the coronavirus. So it's like, and like, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, I wouldn't wish illness upon anyone, but come on, you just got to be like, okay, everyone, calm down, calm down. It's just because it's come out at a time where everything was slow, and then like it's just been built up, built up, built up. And I won't lie, maybe China had a little that with the way China is when it comes to certain bits of information, how they restrict stuff and everything like this, they may have not handled it in the best way. But when they started to get on it properly, they, you know what I mean? I would say they've done an effective job. When they were okay, hands up, we've screwed up. And like, I would say if you take a look at, say, Italy, where like, I think it's like 30,000 cases and rising. You, crazily quickly, you got to go right. Okay, to the point where I think the Italian England game has been cancelled this week for the Six Nations. So you know what I mean.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that, and it's affecting their football as well. So I saw that the Champions League match with Juve. And I forget who the other team is, but they're going to be playing that behind closed doors as well. So they were talking about how that might affect, and it will affect. It does affect the players because there will be no atmosphere there.
Yeah,
you know?
No, absolutely. No, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think they actually might be bringing the Italian league to a close sooner rather than late than the regular.
Is that right? Wow.
As I say, I'm not 100% sure about this. This is like I heard, but yeah, you know, what I mean, right now, like someone could go, they're not playing games like on this Sunday. I go, okay, by the time it's
Understand?
gone
Yeah,
around, yeah, it's like, oh, they've stopped the league and they're not going to be playing the games of football ever again in this lifetime. It's like, yeah.
that's
So,
it.
so I'm not
Things
too
can
sure.
change so quickly, can't they? Things can change.
Oh, yeah. And like the whole thing is, just, uh, as you say, perspective, always perspective.
Yeah,
Because I think many a times, depending on the person's like perspective, like life can be so much worse
mm,
for them, or it could be so much better for them. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, like one person can see themselves as rich, the other person can see themselves as quite poor, depending on
mm.
their perspective. Yeah,
Yeah. No, 100%. Absolutely.
yeah. No, but with this, like, yeah, you became the founder and like over the course of many, not many years, but a few years, say. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, with your youthful
about
looks.
four. I think it's
Yeah,
about four.
yeah. You became
Yeah.
the like founder and creative director of the new company studio. What is
Yes.
that about? If you can feel,
What is that? Yeah, happy to fill you in.
yeah.
So the new company is a it's a graphic design business
Mm,
specializing in brand identity and digital communications and for small businesses. So I like to really, I mean, here in Australia there's so many small businesses that are
yeah.
starting up, and there's so many people that are starting up little side hustles as well.
Mm,
Something that you probably know quite a lot about, I should say. And I think for those people they need resources, they need good advice, and they need design work, and they need websites and other things. So yeah, the new company is all about helping entrepreneurs and what I like to call heart-centered business owners.
heart center.
So yeah, heart-centered. So I call them that because it's just to define certain business owners that I guess have started a business for a purpose.
Mm,
So there's various reasons why people start businesses. Sometimes they're you know just for money. There's some maybe pushed into it. Sometimes it's a love or passion that they have. But what I like to call a heart-centered business owner is someone that has sort of got a passion, got a real drive,
yeah.
and they've created their business around that because it's a purpose that they see for themselves. So people like that are really lovely to work with because they've already got a vision. You know, they've
Mm,
got a vision as to what their brand may or may not look like, or their website, or any sort of part of their marketing as well. So I specialize in helping people in that area. Been running since for about 4 years.
mm,
Um, and yeah, the real reason that I started that, because it's quite an interesting story as to how I got into starting that business, was if I take a few years back, if I sort of rewind a little bit back to maybe 6, 7 years ago,
mm,
I was in a full-time job at a studio, employed as a senior designer, and the clients that we had were great. They were big, so they
mm.
were corporate. But over a period of time, now I was there for about 3 years, I just started finding that, like, morally, I couldn't really work on those projects anymore.
Oh.
And to give you an insight, I won't name any names, but to give you an insight as to where those businesses.
Name away. We could get sued. No, I have
I
nothing.
mean, yeah. I mean, I'll mention the sort of the industries, and you'll be able to guess. So one of them was the tobacco industry, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And it gets better. So I was in alcohol industry as well. We looked after, and then also gambling. So
Wow. You just like, you know what? To just top that off, you just need weapons.
that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's it. You have a full house right there. But yeah, I,
That's it. That's it. A trifecta of sorts.
well,
It was.
yes, alcohol, gambling, and yeah, well, my God, and
That's it.
tobacco. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Three vices. Now, to your listeners that may be involved in some or all three of those, there's no issues around what you do in your own life.
Yeah.
But to me, what I found was I just started to struggle morally with trying to market and design for businesses that were selling those products, right? And specifically the tobacco one, to be honest, and the gambling.
Yeah,
I like to drink, you know, like the next person. Putting your hand up, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. It goes hand in hand with the football, doesn't it? So yeah, look, I had a bit of another time where a bit of an epiphany again, sort of sorts, to say, hey, you know, these companies, these businesses have really given me interesting work. Creatively, it was very challenging because just for a number of different things, particularly just to touch on it, particularly just in the tobacco industry, that went through an interesting time because of, you know, you couldn't do advertising anymore, direct to consumer. So there was none of that. So we dealt with packaging design, and then that kind of got taken away. If you remember, we did the plain packaging.
Yes.
Kicked off. Yeah.
The green green packaging over in Australia? Yeah. I've seen the news report about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the business that I was working for actually, had a hand in developing that color, so-called color. All right. Yeah.
They actually, okay, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was partly, from what I remember, it's a directive from the government as well. Right. But we worked with our client to try and figure out the colors that we could use. So that was an interesting story in itself. I do remember a story around that and if I can remember correctly, is that there was a color that was defined. Now, to anybody that knows printing and printing processes, if you're to make printing easier, for a lot of printers, you might, as a designer, you might choose what's called a Pantone color. Okay, so Pantones is a group of colors,
right?
Predefined colors, and you obviously, what you get is like a swatch book. So you might have a whole book of all these different colors that you can choose from. It's a little bit like going into, you know, Bunnings or something here, or whatever, a trade sort of shop you have in the UK, where you might say, I want to make my house that color, and there's a little swatch on there. So for print, we have what's called a Pantone swatch book, and we would choose a color, and then that means that wherever you get that sort of document printed, in this case it was packaging, so cigarette packaging, the printer could use that color because it's a predefined mix, and then they use that on their printing presses, and it can be consistent across lots of different print material, let's say, So it's a way of making it easier for the printer and for everyone. So there was one that was defined, a color, but it seemed to, from memory, it seemed to be too close to the color olive. Okay. And I think so stick with me here. Stick with me. Yeah. We're still talking about tobacco.
Yes.
And this color, so if you remember, part of what we had to come up with was a really gross color, because we didn't want to make it appealing to people buying cigarettes.
Well, olive is a very appealing color to many a person. So, yeah.
There you go. Exactly. So what happened was there was an association here, and hopefully I'm getting my story correct, but there was an association here called the Olive Growers Association.
Oh, I can see where this might be going.
So stick with me. So the Olive Growers Association found out about this color that was going to be used on this cigarette packaging and thought, no way, we don't want that associated because it's too much like, what we do. Their own product, So had to go back to the drawing board and create an even dirtier color,
Yeah.
And we couldn't be calling it olive green either.
It's like you might be the tobacco company, but we will sue.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, exactly. So not something, yeah, you wouldn't want to get into that. So that happened.
yes,
Then we had to go back to the drawing board and create a more dirtier color.
yes,
Because again, going back to that idea, the plain packaging was created so that um, it wasn't meant to be appealing, right, to people that smoke or to people that don't smoke.
yeah,
And of course, they finally put them behind closed doors as well, so people couldn't even see the packs, so they weren't allured
yeah,
to with the use of color or anything else. So yeah, we had to go back to the drawing board, find a better solution with the color. I think we came up with something super, super muddy
yeah.
and dirtier. Couldn't call it olive. Went through the whole process, I believe, and the problem with it though was that it became super, super difficult to replicate for all these printers
Yeah.
because it was so dirty. So to some of your listeners or to people that don't understand that print process, just think of it as going back to those Pantone colors. So if we
Yeah.
chose one of those colors and said, took that to any printer in the country and said, please print that, Pantone number 1234,
Yeah.
for example, then
Easy.
they could.
Yeah.
Easy.
Mm.
But if we went and said, look, it's based on this 1234, but we've added a bit of cyan, we've added more yellow, rah, 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 it's actually very difficult to replicate that in different print shops
Right.
as well. Okay.
But would that also change on the type of paper it might be printed on as well?
Yep. Yeah, that's a factor. And also humidity in the facility and the city actually makes a difference too.
Oh, God.
So yeah, so there's all these factors.
Dear me, that is a pain in the okay. But I'm
Yeah,
sure your
pain in,
company got paid handsomely for it, but pain in the backside.
yeah. So that yeah, a little story around how that came around, which was pretty interesting how all that came around. And I think finally they got to the right color, and
Mm.
I think there was a lot of trial and error getting it right. As I said, a lot of variables up and down, printers not being able to replicate it across the country, and I think a few runs and a few bits of cardboard and wasted stock, as you could imagine, and probably lots of money down the drain. But that was all part of the process. Yeah. Then it finally, I think, got out into the wider public.
Ah.
So very interesting. But back to I suppose the print aspect of then that client was and how I made my decision about ultimately leaving was that
Yeah.
I couldn't quite get my head around all the marketing that was involved with dealing with that client. So decided just to look at other avenues and I think move on from that.
Mm.
And I went and freelanced for a couple of years after, just to really sort of dip my toes into the industry, see what other clients I could work for and other businesses, and obviously to have the freedom as well to sort of do whatever you want to do and work from home.
Yeah. Working at home, just like eating some
Yeah.
cereal. Just like, how long's that project going to be taking? Yeah, I'm on
Yeah,
it.
exactly. That's right. It's like, isn't it a bit like the newsreaders where I think they wear like the spare shorts
Yep.
and then they got the suit and tie on the top half.
Yeah. I won't say anything, but I'm kind of like that right now.
Oh, yeah, like that now.
It's just like, got my basketball shorts on, and it's like,
Yeah,
like formal hoodie, but
that's it.
but
Yeah, that's it.
ready to
The
party.
That's it. The benefits of working from home. I know it has its ups and downs, doesn't it?
Yes. I like basically when I worked from home, it was great, sort of like having having that option to sort of like roll out of bed and then like power everything on, but you kind of
Yeah.
like zombie walk through rooms and then sit down and you get to it. But then there's times where you're like, I really would like to talk to someone. Just you know what I mean?
Yes.
Distract me from what
Yeah.
I'm doing right now. Just that little bit of company. Oh, it's me and the TV in the
Yeah,
background or like
bit of
music in the
human
background.
interaction.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where I think
Yeah,
it's a downside. Yeah. Um,
it is. No, 100%. Yeah.
yeah. Like if I was ever working for myself, I would have to most probably be in a sort of co-office spot or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
um, so just have that I can interact with human beings if I needed to stop me like
Yes.
losing it. But yeah,
100%. We need to get distracted being humans. We need to be distracted at times so then we can focus, right?
absolutely.
Or
Yes.
maybe that's just from a creative perspective. I know that fellow creatives will probably understand.
No, I disagree. I wouldn't call myself a creative, but like, yeah, I'm more a hammer and tong, get on the phone kind of guy
Yeah.
for my like job. But there's times where you need to have that sort of mental break when you've heard
Okay.
no about 6 million times, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
someone talk to me. I want to get away from this for a while, and like, yeah, sort of let me recharge my batteries, then I can go back onto it. Yeah,
100%.
but yes, but yeah, you were saying you like basically you did a little bit of contracting, working from home, and then basically like so was it a case of you just tripped into doing the company by your like doing like starting up the company, or was it a case of more serendipitous where you met one or two people? How did it happen?
Yeah, it's probably a combination. I know it's probably a combination of things where I fell into it. I was freelancing, so with that, you sort of needed your own ABN here in Australia to do that. And then I suppose over time, I just made that official by recruiting the company,
Yeah.
um, or the business, and yeah, and then acquiring some customers.
Mm,
The clients is exactly what you need. So. Yeah, I do remember when I first started and launched, I actually was working with a lot of community kind of clients, which was really, really, really interesting actually for me
mm,
because of that background, that story that I told before, where I was working more that corporate environment or working for corporate clients, I should say, um, and then wanting to work with over that time freelancing, I figured in my own head that I wanted to work with companies that were doing good things
yeah.
and work with good people and interesting projects, whether they were community minded or not. So that was a bit of you could say, an intention of mine, back then. It was a huge swing. It was sort of like, been working for these big businesses. I'm kind of a little bit over, not quite. It's not quite a fit anymore for
Yeah.
me, and I feel like I want to do some good. Um, and yeah, my first clients for the business were community-based projects and clients here in Melbourne, which was
Okay.
really awesome.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm,
So those started to kick off, and I sort of thought, okay, maybe I'll continue doing this, and yeah, kind of, sort of kept going, I suppose, and more. And now I sort of work with more small businesses, so I do that community stuff as well,
mm,
but it's moved more into helping small business owners and entrepreneurs. So, but that was quite a swing for me, and that was quite a really interesting one because I think it was the power of intention,
mm,
right? You putting out into the universe sort of what you feel like you want to, clients you want to work with, and that ended up coming back to me, which
yeah.
which I thought was very cool.
No, I can imagine with regards to working with like yeah, tobacco, alcohol, and gambling. Like from like I would imagine from like what you've just said, like a sort of energy, like spiritually way for yourself. That was I can imagine quite wearing after a
Mm,
while. So like that type of wearing, I
it
can't
was.
imagine anyone wanting to stay in that too long because if you do, or if you're not aware of
Yeah,
it, before you know it, it's going to be the thing. What I would say makes you either dissatisfied with what you're doing in life, or eventually makes you sick in some way, either physically or like mentally, in many regards. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely. No, and look, and everyone's different, aren't they? I mean,
Mm,
some people, look, if you're happy in the job that you're in,
Oh yeah.
happy working for the client and stuff, like all good, you know. I just think for the people though, and myself was included in this, if I was feeling just kind of, you know, I wasn't motivated to work
Mm.
for that client and I didn't believe in what they were selling, right?
Yeah.
So it was a moral thing for me to just go, no, okay, I've got to change something because it's not making me happy.
Yes.
Um, and I just wanted to put my focus into doing, yeah, better projects. And I think that there was a period of time, probably over, it's probably 2 years, 2.5 years, where I think all I was getting was these community projects.
Mm.
So it was sort of filling me up, you know, in a really positive way
Mm.
from probably what I lost working for those other clients. So yeah, that was the big switch. That was a big switch for me, I think, which was really cool.
Mm. Yeah, good, good. Like one of the things, like you say, you work with like smaller companies at this moment in time. Um,
Mm.
like one of the things I sometimes you look at the world and you see branding everywhere and like the power of brands, but do many of these companies actually understand it themselves, or is it a case of they just yeah, we
Yeah,
just want a logo done and that's it?
yeah, yeah. Good question. Really good question. It's probably 50-50. You know, like
Mm.
I meet people all the time that really do get branding,
Mm.
and they can be sole traders. They can be, you know, I've worked with husband and wife owners of businesses in sort of photography, videography kind of space, and they really understand branding.
Mm.
So I think it depends on what your perspective is. And then, of course, I've met people that, yeah, really don't know much about how important your brand is, and I think that's more what we should be talking about, just how important it is.
Mm.
Not comparing to, you know, your Nikes and your Virgin and, you know, all these, you know, your
Yeah.
Apples and all these, because everyone sort of aspires to them, but it's like, hang on a second, you're just a small business. It's not the same,
Yeah.
and you don't want it to be the same. But but there are some key things that small businesses should really take note, and they should, you know, they should think about, I think, when they're starting out. So
Mm.
yeah, to answer your question, it's a bit of both.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because like with regards to like people like who have come out on the rise, there like there's a YouTuber called Roberto Blake who talks about branding, and like he's very much a disciple of Gary V and that type of
yep.
ilk, and you hear like they give out the same message again and again and again and again and again. Like they've like
Mm,
I've like watched Gary V's content for maybe 5 6 years. Like started with
yeah.
like
Love
video.
him. How good is he?
Yeah, he's oh
Yeah.
superb. It started with his video of life starting at 40, blah blah blah. My friend Steve Ball, who was also on the podcast, sent me the videos like because we were having a sort of similar conversation, and by sort of serendipity, it
Mm,
like he was like, yeah, check this out. I was like, oh, right. But yeah, he always talks about the importance of branding, like not on not on the like sort of like Apple, Nike, Coca Cola type levels, but your own personal brand and how it's important to make it happen. For like
yeah.
brand yourself first and then take things forward from there. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
I would. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, there's levels to, you know, if Gary Vee is exceptional with what he does and his
Mm.
brand, his personal brand, you know, he just the way that he's sort of constantly out there and stuff. That's to get that content out there. You know yourself that's pretty difficult to do. I think you need, you know, a bit of a team behind you. But I think what smaller businesses can do is just to go through that process, if they haven't, of just, you know, being really clear on who their customer is
Mm.
and what problem they are solving for their client or their customer, being really clear on that, and then being quite clear on what you're going to deliver for them,
Mm.
and then so therefore what your message is. So, you know, branding is really having those ideas in your head really clear. That's what branding is, so that your message, when you're putting it out there, that it's clear for people that are watching or listening, or whether it's a podcast that you're on, or whether it's Instagram posts or video or whatever you're sort of doing. I think it's just it's imperative that you are consistent with your message. Now, businesses change all the time. That's really important too. And sorry, to clarify, what I mean by that is maybe your goals for the business can change, or what you're offering, your services can change. You might go from offering 2 services to maybe 3, 4. And with that, you have to be dynamic in what your messaging can be when talking to your audience. But you don't want to change too much that then your audience thinks, have they changed from, doing websites? Suddenly they don't do websites, and suddenly all they do is maybe develop apps or something like that. Now, that might seem quite a natural change for the business owner, but maybe that's a completely different client, isn't it, or customer?
Yeah.
That they may have. They might be sitting there going, well, actually, I just wanted a website and I thought you did that, but they don't anymore. And that, just as an example, that's something that I think is important. So in that case, sometimes what I say to my clients is, if that's what you're doing, you want to change what your business offering is, well, then that's almost an opportunity then to a brand refresh. Okay. And you don't have to change your name of the business if you don't want to. Sometimes people do. They do choose to change their name if it is. And if we keep the same example of websites to apps, maybe they could be called something digital, maybe their name, or maybe something websites. And obviously people might go, oh, yeah, we need to change that name because now we're doing something different. So there's those opportunities there. I think but getting back to the branding thing for small businesses, I think it's important just with your message to be consistent. You don't need to be everywhere to everybody, like Gary Vee talks about. Like I watch a lot of his stuff, and it's amazing. But for a lot of small business owners, it's pretty challenging to be everywhere, and very difficult to do, right? So you have to sort of think about, well, where your target audience is. Are they, if we're dealing with if we're talking about social media, are they in Facebook? Are they on Instagram, or are they on LinkedIn? Where are they? And maybe just focus on one stream to start with anyway, and then sort of branch out. So that's where branding just comes into play, to be consistent with your message, so that then really what they're after, right, is trust.
Yeah.
So, sales, I think, you're in sales, you understand that there's a trust element that goes on. And as soon as people trust who you are, what message you're bringing, probably what your core values are sometimes, and we're talking more of a brand now, then they're more likely for people to buy something from you. So if you're consistently putting a message out there in front of those right people, then that's when you'll start to get sales, stuff like that. So I talk through my clients that kind of process.
Now, I would imagine this process takes a little bit of time. I wouldn't imagine it's like you sit down for one meeting and it's all done and dusted. Or is it like a case of a thing which evolves and grows from like that process?
Yeah, you're right. No, sometimes they're creative. So like if we're talking about a brand identity design, so a logo design essentially, sometimes like that process for me sometimes can be quite quick. But what's really important to start with is that communication with the client up front. So yeah, the process with me would be, first of all, we go into a bit of a discovery phase so with the client. So it's around, I send them a creative brief. It has a bunch of questions on them, which are pretty standard questions, but really just to understand the level of thinking you've done already on your business. And as an example, let's start with someone that's just starting a business. just starting off, so they need a brand, they need a logo,
Mm.
and it's questions around style preferences and thoughts on, obviously around who their target audience is
Yeah.
and where they think they are, and obviously what they're selling in services and so on. So there's that discovery phase where I go through those, gather information from the client, do some research on if they have any competitors in that industry. So some competitor analysis.
Mm.
And then after understanding from the client too, whether they've got any style, things that they like style-wise, fonts, colors. Some clients come to me and they say, you know what, Huw, I really love the color pink, and I want to start this business, and I'm selling. I'm a baker, and I'm cooking. I'm selling wedding cakes, and I want pink, and this is my name, and let's go.
Wow. So,
And so I say, awesome. Like,
yeah.
it's amazing when some people have a really clear vision, which is great, because then there's a lot of energy at the beginning, which is awesome, and you can sort of try and get into their energy too, right? And sort of understand from their perspective where they're at with it. And I've had some really fun projects like that where they're really clear, and then the process moves pretty smoothly. Sometimes the clients need a lot more help, which is completely fine. That's obviously why they want to engage someone, engage a designer, a brand sort of specialist, is because you need to go sometimes through some of those exercises around maybe how to name your business.
Yeah.
That's an interesting process. And then what kind of a logo do you want? And then obviously talking about what their services are and where they want to position themselves basically in a market,
Yeah.
So that can be, so that's an interesting one, because you have very different people coming to you, which I love. And going back to that process, once we go through that discovery phase, and some of those style cues, I'll then present back a mood board, which might have a lot of images on there that we've found on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
If we're doing a website, then they may have shown some websites that they really love.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple that they really don't like, which is also really good to show. Yeah, and to ask for, because it's what this process is for me to understand what's in their head,
Mm.
And that's kind of in a way, it's sort of the secret sauce, not by giving it away, but designers, I think in general, or creatives in general, are quite good at sort of putting themselves in their client's shoes.
Okay.
That's what I think anyway. I think as a bit of a strength. I mean, you have to show empathy, and you have to show some kind of an affinity with, okay, well, if I'm this person and I want to sell wedding cakes, well then what does that feel like, and what colors would I be using? Now, it's great when that client comes forward and says, oh, I want to use pink, because you go, well, cool, that's, and they're a female, that works perfectly. And but other times, obviously, it's a lot more challenging, where you have to gather just more information, and you're processing that, in your head to try and figure it out as you go. But that's where the I suppose the secret lies, in a way, is just having empathy for your client. Yeah, which is super important, hey?
Yeah. No, I agree. And no, basically, no, that is some like real insight into like your sort of, how can I say, the process of getting things right for your clients. I got to say, must be hella challenging, because what I imagine you say, getting inside your client and sort of empathizing with them, but what their sort of creative vision is, and your creative vision, sometimes it will be completely opposite poles, and trying to get that down in a time efficient manner, to know what go right. This is what we want, and this is how it is, and you meet in the middle. tricky. I wouldn't I wouldn't be able to do
Yeah,
it. No, no, no. Like I can imagine there are some people what fall into the trap where they get too hard headed and go, I am the creative. This is my like
yeah.
I you have a vision, but no, this is what I do, and forget about what the client really wants. Fall
Yeah,
into that
that's an
trap.
interesting point you bring up actually, because I do remember designers, well, maybe as an industry, I
Mm,
think there's always people within that industry that are a bit hard nosed about it, like you say there, and they sort of want to do things their own way and whatnot. I think throughout my whole career, I can probably stand by this, is that I've never really been one of
mm,
those hard nosed creatives. I've actually tried to best as I can to see from the client's perspective and to gather enough information to make a good call on it, and make a good recommendation. And obviously, I'll put my foot down if I need to
mm.
around because they are coming as far as they see it. And hopefully they do see you, but they are coming to an expert, right?
There's a I hope so. I have
So
my fingers
yeah,
crossed for
yeah,
you.
that's right. That's right. Fingers crossed. That you know why
Yeah,
you're coming to,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, you hope that is that relationship, so that then they trust you in your opinion, right? So
Mm,
so it is a two-way street. We'll put your foot down. I will put my foot down on certain things, but yeah, generally not too much.
mm.
It's about steering the client into that direction as well. It's not about saying that this is the way that it goes. It's just steering and sort of guiding into the right decision. I think with naming businesses, that's sort of the approach that I take as well, because naming businesses is a very personal thing for the owner.
Yeah.
So again, if we're talking about it, if it's a sole ownership, or even if it's a husband and wife team, or even if it's someone that's thinking they might have a team of 10 or 15 later down the track, the
Mm.
name of the business is really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's super, super important.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and that individual has to have an affinity with that name,
Yeah. No.
um, a personal kind of a sense that, yep, I understand that. They have to understand that if they're answering the phone, they're talking to people that they understand what the purpose is behind that brand and that name. They have to be confident when they say it. There's a whole bunch of other things that are behind that. So I'll guide them into them making their own decision about the name.
Ah,
I'll make recommendations, and
yes.
there's some exercises that we can go through around naming and steering them in that right direction. But ultimately, it does lie with the client to say, oh, yes, cool. Out of these three, I'm really resonating with this one.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So super important. Yeah.
No. Yeah. No. I've got to say, it did take a little bit of time to sort of work my way into the name for this podcast. I was like, yeah, like gonna call it this. I'm gonna call it that. Bouncing around this. Like, yeah. I was gonna call it yeah, the endless journey of growth at one point. But yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So
Yep.
it's like okay, like yeah, and then I was like yeah, day in day out, because in my mind, yeah, I'm talking to people about their sort of day in day out, like sort
Yeah, I
of
like it.
like yeah, their day in day out like activities, their journey, like yeah. So that's how it sort of came to me. But I would say there was many a name, which I went, that's fantastic, that's a great name, and then like yeah, had to cast it to the side because it was just
Mm,
no, 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 no,
mm.
no. But yeah, it took a little bit of time, but yes, it's all good.
Amazing. And
Yeah,
you've also got the element, I think, with your name around, because I know you're a football fan.
yes,
So anybody that watches football knows that there's, sometimes the coaches do talk about that sort of day in, day out type
mm,
of phrase, right,
yeah,
around football. And so I think, yeah, it's a nice kind of a phrase. It's a nice sort of metaphor for, okay, what business can be like day in,
mm,
day out, and also from the football aspect, knowing you and you love football, so I can see that aspect too.
yes. Like you know what, like I would talk about football more on the podcast, but it's one of those things. I'm a football fan to the level of like, yes, I know my first team, but like if you ask me to sort of like started to go in deeper, like with other players and all that sort of in-depth knowledge, I'll be like,
Mm.
yeah, no, I wouldn't be able to do that. But if you told me what would be the best tactic right now, I most already go, yeah, if you do this, do that, do that. I most already come up with a decent like strategy behind it, but I don't
Yeah,
sort of have that sort of deep pool of knowledge of which player would you bring on right now to make that change, to make
sure.
things better. And yeah, I wouldn't claim or profess because there are many a person who sits in their armchairs who knows stats
Mm.
going back to like freaking 1964 or beyond, talking about this, that, the other, who should be on
Yeah,
a platform talking about it with a couple of their mates and like going, yeah, I would give a lot of time towards that to listen to, but they're not.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No,
and
there's levels to it for sure. There's people with absolutely. There's those podcasts that people have, and there's those shows that people have. I think on Sky Sports or something. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
yeah.
What people know these days is insane.
Oh yeah, and like you know what I mean. Yeah, and like some people go, oh yeah, but you know quite a lot. No, I'm just like in comparison,
Mm,
I'm a filthy casual. It's like
yes,
yeah,
but you've got other things to do, haven't you? Meanwhile, you've got this podcast that you're running. You've got your exercise that you're doing. So
yeah,
yeah,
like
you got to be doing lots of different things, not focusing on one thing.
yeah. Well, like this is the thing. When you talk about exercise, you exercise yourself a lot as well. So you know what
Mm,
I mean. Like as you were talking about the boxing classes you've been taking, uh,
yeah,
like so
yeah.
you know what I mean, you are keeping yourself active, and I agree with you in the sense of you've got to do many things to sort of keep you sharp around a lot of different areas. One of the reasons why I started this podcast is because what I don't know about you, but for me, as time goes by, uh, you sort of stop engaging as much as you used to, like in comparison to like free. If I went jump back 10 years in my 30s, I'd be going, oh yeah, I was engaging with people on this level. If I went
Mm.
back to my 20s, it was like that level, and in my teens, it was astronomical. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I think your friendship group does get a lot smaller, doesn't it? When you get a little bit older.
yeah.
Not. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that's it. Yeah, personally, I think that's a good thing. It means that you have more in depth conversations and
Mm,
relationships with people, for sure. But yeah, look, I really enjoyed the boxing fit. As I think I said to you off
yeah.
just before we started this, that I'm not getting in the ring anytime soon. So
Hey,
no chance of that. I'm not a real violent person, put it that way.
hey, I just wanted to see you on the UFC in that octagon, like throwing elbows,
uh,
like yeah, putting in
oh
triangles
God.
left, right, and center.
Yeah, no. It's a fascination. I mean, I don't know why, but I'm fascinated with that kind of stuff. Maybe it's like the discipline or the ability that those people have. But
Mm.
yeah, not going to start it anytime soon. Just purely for
Yeah.
fitness. And look, it helps. It helps, I think, when running businesses and doing other things. For
Mm.
me, it's a great stress release, and just as a daily thing to get out of the house, obviously to interact with some people
Yeah.
like we were talking about before. So that's always good. Yeah, very
Yeah.
valuable. Go and exercise for sure, man.
Absolutely. Like, uh, with regards to like sort of things which have influenced you, is there a particular book, movie, or sort of like influencer which has like played an effect, others say than Gary V or anything like that over the last year or two?
Oh, good question. Yeah, putting me on the spot. Hey,
No.
great question.
Hey.
Great question. Great question. I mean, obviously, um, you know, going through like learning about design, I've read lots of books on that subject,
Mm.
um, around branding and stuff. Unfortunately, I can't remember any sort of names, but those were ones that they sort of formulated my idea on what branding's about and the benefits of it, and the process and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like a mishmash of a bunch of whole different sort of levels of training. Um, for me, now, I think it's really about listening to a lot of different people that are out there, whether they're on YouTube and different platforms. And look, Gary V, I know you mentioned Gary V. He's actually a standout to me.
Yeah.
Because he's turned from sort of a business owner, entrepreneur, to now more of a speaker who really is an advocate for going out and trying things and not wasting time, and acknowledging when you're in a crap job and go do something else. So for me, because I've been following his work for probably the last 4 or 5 years, and that's been in sort of tandem with my business as well. I really probably feel that he's probably had a real strong effect on me, because a lot of his stuff is around mindset.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, and it is an ongoing process, nobody's perfect. We're all trying to move along sort of this journey, whatever journey that we're on, whether it's personal or professional or what have you. But Gary V for me has been amazing to give me confidence and ability and mindset to say, no, screw this. I'm actually going to go try do this other thing. Confidence to go do things by yourself, think for yourself. And also, being someone over the age of 40 as well, I think...
For shame. No.
No.
With your youthful looks, no, sir.
Thank you. You're too kind, meanwhile, too kind. But, for people in that sort of age bracket, I think that stuff that he talks about, if you haven't known, is just super important, because I think for a lot of people, that idea of a midlife crisis has been around. I think maybe that paradigm has kind of changed. It used to be people rushing out buying Ferraris and motorbikes and other things, right? Maybe their relationship might be breaking down. I think these days, and maybe this is just my perspective, because I am in keeping with a lot of clients that are starting businesses and in around that kind of groups, right? But I do see a lot of people getting to those sort of 40-ish and a little bit older and thinking, this corporate job or this job I've had all my life up until that point, I actually want to do something that has purpose, that has meaning, right? And they make a decision that, oh crap, I'm actually not enjoying what I'm doing, or I've always wanted to start an online business. I've always, as an example, maybe they make their own clothes, or they make something, right? And so they start a business online. So I've seen a lot of that stuff happen, and so for me, it's been empowering for me, because it's made me look at my age, looking at other avenues for income. Yeah. So to say, yes, I can sell my services as a designer, logos, websites, those types of things, but I can also look at other avenues of income, selling products online, Amazon situations, drop shipping, lots of different marketing areas that I suppose I've learned through Gary V highlighting some of those options, and then diving deeper into platforms like YouTube and finding out a little bit more about that as well. So I think that's important, and so that's been quite important for me, as well as then I've seen that with clients that have come to me because they've reached that sort of similar stage. So yeah, he's been sort of pivotal, I think, and with his stature, I think in the industry at the moment, he's someone that that might take a little while to sort of warm up to, because his approach is pretty.
Yeah, no, like his approach is his approach. I got to say, like, if you're not sort of used to it, it is quite raw. and like the whole thing
Yeah.
is, it kind of like, how can I put it? He tries to eliminate some, like many of the like BS excuses we'll come up with on a sort of day
Yeah.
to day basis, because like for example, like right now, what we're doing like with this podcast, okay, this is something which, okay, if it was 10 years ago, would be considerably more of a challenge
Mm.
to do.
Mm.
Now it's a case of, with my setup right now, I've got it hooked up to a PC, got a couple of USB mics, a webcam, and like away.
Yeah.
Like yeah, tried to do it over Skype, but Skype didn't work. But doing like Facebook
Yeah.
Messenger is working right now,
That's
and
good. Yeah.
yeah. And this is the thing: if we were face to face, there is other products you can buy to have a podcast studio in the
Mm.
size, like in the space of a laptop, say. So, like I would say, yeah, like you don't need to put out a lot of capital investment to get started with a lot of these things. It's just a
Mm.
case of, yeah, starting with it. Like with, you mentioned YouTube. Okay, like I've got myself an 80D Canon camera, but now today, with many of the, like if you bought a phone in the last 2 or 3 years, you've
Mm.
got like such a good camera on that to do video recording and anything like that, you're
Mm.
perfectly fine with it. It's like a case of, there are, it's, he's trying to like go, okay, you've got this excuse, but there's this. This is the alternative solution to that. You've got that excuse. This is the next solution to that. Like if you're blogging, you've got like, you can do it either off your phone or off a tablet or off a
Yeah.
computer. One of these things or all three of these things you're going to own. So it's just a case of you getting out there, putting yourself forward, and don't let anyone like get in your way or BS you that you can't do it.
Mm.
It comes down to
Mm.
you make sure to represent the best you can and bring yourself in a quality way. Um,
Yeah.
and let the market decide, which he often says.
Yeah. 100%. But it's just giving it a go, isn't it?
Mm,
Like, I think a lot of people, and look, at various times we're all guilty of this. I think it's just the natural condition where we question ourselves. We do things like self-sabotage,
mm,
on occasion, right? We've probably all heard of that.
yeah.
Some of us to different degrees. But just starting something. And again, if it's something that you have been thinking about for a long time, like starting a business or changing careers,
Yeah.
moving countries, or whatever you want to do, it's, yeah, I can't sort of. I think what he brought was just an urgency, I suppose, a sense of urgency,
Mm.
where he brings that across in, yeah, a pretty full-on kind of manner. But I think that sort of helps to wake people up, right?
Yeah, no, and I think people like, there are people what do need to be waking up, just to like some of their like true potential, because like I would say there are many of us out there who like
Mm,
basically are not going at our true potential. Like even if it was a case of you were going like, doesn't even to be that much more, maybe 5% more than they're going at right now, their
yeah,
life will be so much more richer than what it is currently. So it's just a case of, yeah, finding what your true potential is and finding out what is that sort of true calling. It might sound corny, but you know what I mean, what that
mm,
true calling could be. And I would say
yeah,
with that, even it doesn't mean you're making a bucket load of money. It's just a simple case of you doing something which is going to empower you and make you feel that much better, happier, for like the long and short of it. I would say that
yeah,
sometimes comes down to being the more important thing. And with when you were talking about, yeah, going back to the company where you were working for, like alcohol, tobacco, and I keep about to say guns, but not gun, but
no, that was the
yeah,
one that I
gambling.
hadn't.
Yeah, yes, but gambling, how that was in a way not playing to like, well, one, like the main thing, not to your happiness, but I would say also to, not to what you would say your sort of like true potential is, if you get what I mean. Like,
Mm,
so yeah. Um,
definitely. No, definitely. Is that true potential? And I think with certain with business owners that I meet, some of them is really strong with them. You know, that they've had that epiphany, they've had that bit of a pivotal moment in their life, where sometimes it's so many different things. Sometimes it's maybe they got retrenched at work, and suddenly they're in a time where they've actually got space and time to think about what they want to do, what their next thing is going to be. They might have had a feeling that, you know, maybe they have been making their own clothes at home or jewelry. I get that quite a lot, you know, with creatives making things at home, but often the job that they were in for so long hasn't, it's tough, right? Like you're in a full-time work, you've got all these other commitments. It's actually pretty tricky to follow your passion in other areas. You really have to work pretty hard.
Yeah.
Spending time on weekends, spending time in the evenings. Sometimes you have to forget about other things that you're doing, other social gatherings and other things like that, just to concentrate on that. And not everyone can find time. So sometimes it's pivotal moments where people find themselves in, they've got space and time to think about, hang on, I love doing this.
Yep.
I want to make more of it. And now there are options that they can use with the internet. And, you know, to go back to and to tie it in with branding, I think, you know, people buy from people that they like, right? Essentially. So people will purchase, people will buy your product if they like you, and then they will go out and find more information generally about you with the internet. There's often a fair bit of stuff that we can find out about people, just what their business page looks like, what their LinkedIn is, what their background is. And so if the person can see where they've kind of come from and that they're being driven by a purpose, and if they maybe have a mission statement regarding their business, or they've had kind of epiphanal sort of moment, that's, I think, is inspiring for others, isn't it? I think that's inspiring for people, even if they're purchasing, as an example, say some jewelry from that person. They can see that, yep, they love what they do. They can see that in the creative execution, and then they go, amazing, I buy into what that business is about, and I buy into you, and I buy into that product. And that is essentially what branding is. It's not just a name. It's not just saying, there's this business called Apple.
Yeah.
Like, why have they called themselves after a fruit? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If you strip away the brand, people would probably ask that question. If you didn't know who Apple was, they would be like, why weren't they called just, you know, kiwi fruit or like banana or something? Like, it's pretty interesting, but because Apple has got such a brand, meaning that they've got equity in everything that they do. They're known for amazing design. They're known for user experience. They're known for, you know, a whole bunch of other things. That is what makes the brand. So if you can do that in your small business, I think it's super important. People will buy more from you.
Yeah. And like, this is the thing, I would say anyone who has got a small business, something they can take away from like the big boys and girls businesses out there is like, look at the sort of work ethic which has gone behind building that brand, like basically making that brand a institution in today's society. Like, it's not about like replicating that success, but if you can replicate the success of that brand behind it all, and once you've done that, I would say things can start moving quite quickly for them.
No, you're right. You're spot on. And I think it's about taking just the little points from how those bigger companies do it, because realistically, you know, you can't play in that arena. But what you can do is have a clear direction, have a clear purpose as to what you're selling and who you're selling to, and then create a clear brand. So brand in a visual sense. So if you do have a logo, make sure that logo and your name and your colors that you've got for that brand are used across all the platforms that you want to be on. So social platforms. So every place where your customer might see you, make sure that it looks consistent. So we don't want to have, different logos, an old one and a new one on Facebook, and, you don't want to have different fonts that's under your name, or you want it to be consistent, because then that is around trust. So that creates trust from your customer, right? So as I said, people will start to look around and sometimes gather information before they want to buy from, say, a web designer or a branding expert. And if they can see it consistent across, then you've won in that arena. And if you know where your customer is, then just target your efforts in that space. That's what I would say to my clients. And this doesn't have to cost a lot of money, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. It's actually just about focusing on what those key elements are, and then just do them really well.
Excellent. You know what? I got to say, we are 1 hour and 44 minutes in.
Wow.
Yes. Yep. It's late here, and I'm gonna have to go. I'm sorry to cut it short, but you have been a star, a legend, sir. Can you tell people where they can find you? Like, what's your social medias and all of that? I will be putting them in the description as well, but yes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for having me on again, Miwa. It's been excellent. It's been really awesome to chat. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, no, thank you for this, man. Pleasure, bro.
So people can get hold of me. The website is thenewcompany.com.au, and across social. So I'm on Facebook. If you just look up The New Company on there, and on Insta, it's The New Company Studio.
Excellent.
So please check us out there.
Are you on the Twitter, sir?
My personal one is there, so it's Huw Davies design, I believe, is my handle. I don't use it a lot for business. Twitter, not one of those streams that I do use, but yes, I'm on there if people want to check me out there too. Awesome.
Excellent. Okay, what I'm going to say is, thank you very much, my friends, my life warriors, for listening to this podcast. I want to say thank you to Huw. Yes, if you can take a moment or two to go to his website, check him out. Subscribe to any of his links, or give him a chat if you need to. That'd be great. And by all means, please subscribe to the podcast. It's been an interesting journey so far, and I'm glad I'm catching up with some great old friends. Anyway, I say goodbye to you, my friends. I say goodbye to you, my life warriors. Be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be, and have a great day. Okay, boom. Oh yeah.